Hey everyone, welcome to episode 192 of the Ceres Podcast, and I'm your host, Stelios. Today I have on two good friends from the industry, Tim Barnes, director of Krispies Fish and Chips, and Paul Goodgame, managing director of the Chesterford Group. With so much happening in the UK business landscape at the moment, following the recent budget, I just wanted to talk to two industry leaders who have probably taken the time to reflect on these changes and how it will affect their business. And then we discuss a little bit about how it might affect everyone else's business. If you want to know more about Paul and Tim, then go back to previous episodes as they have been on many episodes with us. We'll cover a mix of topics in this episode. There's so much going on right now. Staying up to date can feel like a bit of a challenge. It'll probably feel like that until April, until we absorb everything. But we're trying our best to keep everybody informed and up to date, whether it's through the podcast or our news feed over at Ceres.shop. It's hard to believe that we're approaching 200 episodes. When I first launched the Ceres Podcast, it was really, I just thought we'd do 5 or 6 episodes to test the waters. And to be here now with 4 other fantastic hosts, 190 or so great guests, thousands of engaged listeners, it really feels like we're building something special here. Let me know what you think. Your feedback is always invaluable. We also have a little bit of a quick update. We've launched a Ceres WhatsApp announcement group. It's, at the moment anyway, a one-way communication channel for news updates, podcast releases, special offers, competitions. It's not a chat group because I think things would get a bit busy on a WhatsApp group if there were so many people messaging, but we'll see. We'll test that in time. But it's just basically just think of it as a little bit of a news feed, and you'll get the podcast there. We've got some good offers coming, and usually we only promote our offers on our email, but we think we can put our offers there, and we've got a good Black Friday offer coming soon. So, I'll put the link in the show notes, but obviously just search Ceres in WhatsApp, but we might even add you anyway at some point. So anyway, speaking of offers, like I just said, we do have a Black Friday deal coming for Black Friday. It's going to be a one-day only event. You won't want to miss it. So again, be on our mailing list or be on the WhatsApp group so you can get the details. Today's show sponsor is Ceres Curry Sauce, crafted with real herbs and spices from around the globe. This curry sauce delivers a pure, authentic taste even, with no artificial flavourings, no artificial colourings or preservatives. It's naturally gluten-free, and a little goes a long way because 5 kilos makes a whopping 41 kilograms of sauce, giving you 410 servings, which makes it incredibly great value for money compared to anything else because it is a concentrate. So don't be fooled by everyone else's yield when they say high yield, because the figures just don't stack up and ours do. Order yours today at www.ceres.shop for free next day delivery across mainland UK, or pick it up or order it from your local wholesaler. Your customers will absolutely love it. At Ceres, we're more than just batter mix. We're here to support your business with premium products, insightful podcasts, and expert articles to help you thrive. We don't want you just to survive, we want you to thrive. So drop us a message. We'd love to hear what's inspiring you right now. So less of me. Now let's jump into today's conversation with Tim and Paul. Tim, Paul, thanks for joining me today. We've got a bit of snow up here, and it means that when you get a little bit of snow, it's not that it's a big problem because it's washing away, but everything goes wrong when there's snow. Orders go up, all the orders go up because everybody thinks, oh no, I need to have stock here just in case no one can come. So the team are all over it. We're starting to send updates out now. Because I was saying to Tim just before we started and you were having computer problems, we were saying that DPD will end up emailing us shortly and just saying, just so you know, orders are going to be going out slow. So everyone just... But it's weird because you'd think snow makes generally shops quieter.
Yeah.
But it's the impact of not having stock for 3 days over that period that I think everybody's just like, no, we need it. Like, we don't want to be caught short. So
Panic and react, yeah.
how over the years, broad question, just thinking out loud, what does snow do to your businesses in terms of delivery and walk-ins? Does it change all the dynamics of it?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Go on, Tim, you go if you want to go first.
We haven't actually done deliveries when we've had snow. We don't get snow down here very often. It's wet and miserable at the moment. But it does kill our walk-in trade. People don't, especially if it's decent snow, people just don't want to come out. So it is sort of borderline whether it's even worth being open. And then, of course, you get all the staff saying, I can't get to work. And it's like, have you not heard about walking? There's little things underneath here that can get you moving. So I usually generally then get in my 4x4 and offer them all a lift so they get to work. But no, it does kill trade. But since we've been doing deliveries, we haven't had any significant snow.
Yeah, I mean, for my end, extreme weathers like extreme heat or snow, we do see a drop off by about 10% in sales. But what we do see is quite strange. Delivery goes off the hook because everyone's staying at home and they're going to get delivered in. But because it goes off the hook for every business, the aggregators can't cope with the delivery of it. So you're getting a lot of problems with late orders or orders being assigned to a driver and then they don't turn up. It can be a bit of a world of chaos for the teams in the stores.
I mean, we get that just from, if it's a day of heavy rain, the aggregators clearly the couriers aren't wanting to work in the weather and your orders are coming through and they just never get assigned to a driver, and that's quite frustrating.
Do you find that with couriers now, like Just Eat couriers, Uber Eats couriers, McDonald's have now rebuilt a lot of their stores where they've got like a little area where these drivers can sit there comfortably. They give them a little bit of free food, free drink.
Yeah.
It's warm. They've got a telly. Do you think they're probably thinking, oh, you know what? I'm going to go where there's guaranteed work because McDonald's have probably got loads of work for them. And it's warm in the meantime. Do you ever see any like less drivers because of that, do you think? Riders or drivers?
Yeah, I mean, they definitely anchor themselves around those key businesses they know they're going to get a lot of deliveries from. I mean, that makes sense logistically, right? I mean, if you get a majority of your orders from these big players, stay around them and, you're going to be where you need to be. In some sites, we're quite fortunate that we've got a lot of those big players around our shops, which is great because you can look over the road and there's a McDonald's and there'll be 40 drivers sat on their bikes or in their little shelters. But yeah, it definitely will influence where they're going to position themselves.
Yeah. And I guess, Tim, you haven't got a lot of... Well, actually, you've got a KFC near you and you've got a few other sort of bigger sites near you, and your McDonald's is near your home rather than near your shop, isn't it? So
yeah, well, we don't use aggregators in Exmouth, but in Exeter, the shop is quite... sort of on the outskirts of where the drivers like to be. They more like to be more in the city centre or on the retail parks where the big KFCs and McDonald's are. So yeah, if it is bad weather or anything like that, they sort of hunker down in this sort of the tight area where they know they're going to get the work. So yeah, it can be a bit of a challenge to get someone to come further out. And we do find that, and it's always that frustrating thing as well. They expect the food to be ready, waiting. We don't want to have it ready, waiting, because we want the quality to be as good as possible. And I was there a couple of weeks ago at lunchtime, and we had 2 delivery orders at the same time, assigned to two different drivers. We were just finishing wrapping the first one, and it happened that the driver came in for the second one, not the first one. And he literally, because he saw that it wasn't ready, and it would have been, there was nobody else in the shop, it would have been a 30-second job. He literally turned around and walked out, and then it was just looking then for another driver, and the food's obviously then ready, and it's very frustrating.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they don't do that at McDonald's. I've seen them in Exmouth. They just sit there happily waiting, and they don't just turn around and walk out.
I think from what I can tell, McDonald's have really upped their systems though. Like, I know you can't see it as much now because they're obviously in their little room. But I remember before you'd see like, they'd put labels on the bags to make sure nobody could tamper with them. Now they've got like a whole sleeve that sits over the bag as well, so you can't get in there at all.
Yeah.
Whereas before and the bags are thicker. I think they've done a lot of things. One thing I don't understand is how they managed to deliver drinks without spilling them. They must have got a new lid or something, but that always baffles me, to be honest. But
as far as I'm aware, they literally put a cross of tape over the top of the lid that seals the hole and keeps the lid on, as far as I see.
Yeah, but they're a magnificent company. I don't care what anybody
Absolutely.
says. Like,
technology-wise, without a doubt.
Technology-wise, operational-wise. And I say to a lot of people, when you're looking at doing deliveries, go there, because for the most part, McDonald's food is cold by the time it comes to your table. So how are they managing to get it to, someone's house when it's moderately eatable, or edible, should we say? So, yeah, it makes me wonder. But, I will argue that it's a people thing. Like, riders and drivers being like that and very rushed. Our DPD driver come to collect 300 or so parcels a day. He just literally put his hands up in the air and goes, "Oh, this ain't my job." And I was like, well, we're all just looking at each other thinking, well, you're in a DPD van and you're wearing a DPD uniform. Whose job is it? And he goes, well, no one told me I was collecting this many parcels. And I was like, oh my God, like we were literally sitting in the car park, all of us having this argument. I was like, what if we just help you load it? Oh, okay, then we can do that.
Yeah.
So I think there is a weird thing at the minute where people are just so impatient. That's what I see. There's an impatience going on. I don't know if it's economic or whether it's just everyone's time poor or just can't be bothered. It's someone else's job. Who knows?
Yeah, you're quite right, though. It is a people thing. I mean, the teams in our stores will get to know their delivery drivers, and they'll know the ones that are in a bit more of a rush than others, and the ones that, are happy to wait. And, you build that relationship with them and you help that process become a lot smoother.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, moving on to today, though, guys, tell us a little bit about, for those listening, I know you've both been on before, but things have probably changed since then. So if we start with you, Paul, tell us a little bit about your business, the business you represent, how many staff you employ and so on.
Yeah, sure. So the Chesterford Group, we operate 40 fish and chip takeaways and restaurants over the brands Fishnchickn, Churchills, Bankers, The Boundary, and more recently this year, Toffs. And we also have a franchise partnership with Pret a Manger, and we have 7 sites currently there. And we employ 750 people, which is certainly where all my hair went. And yeah, that's kind of where we are today, if that's a good enough summary.
Yeah, that's great. And Tim?
I'm Tim from Krispies. We have currently 3 sites. Not sure if I really want any more. We employ 75 staff, and we're over a very small area. We're 2 of our shops are in the same town. One is more of a dark kitchen, and then we've got a normal our main fish and chip shop, and then we are then also half an hour away in the city, which is our newest shop.
So you say you don't want to open more shops, but is that a conclusion you've come to? Is that just a flippant comment, or do you generally just don't want no more? Because I know sometimes we do talk in conversation. We I know Kelly would open as many as she could, but you seem to be the reasoned one here. So is it?
Well, at the moment it's the other way around.
Okay.
But it depends on what day of the week you ask me, what's happening at work, how much headache staff are giving us, and we're always looking ways to grow. But it's on good days I want to open hundreds, and on tough days I could sell the lot.
In my experience, I don't know if you've noticed this, guys, but in my experience, anybody that says to me, I don't want any more shops, usually have more shops. And the people that say to me, I want to open 10 shops, usually struggle at one. And I don't know what the difference is. I don't know if it's just because the person who says I don't want no more understands the reality of how difficult this bloody thing is, and the person that wants 10 shops actually probably doesn't understand the reality of how hard it is to get there. So it's just interesting because a friend of ours as well, I'm not sure if you know him, Paul, but Tim does, Benico Zaniu, he's got a few shops in Liverpool, and at Liverpool area, or Southport, and he always says to me, I never want any more shops. And all he's done since I've known him is open more shops. So I don't know. I think once you find your flow, I wonder if that's probably what makes you open more shops, because you see an opportunity and think, you know what, we can take that thing, we can do this.
It's going from the two. Well, I always sort of say that we didn't really have two shops. We always had sort of 1.5, because our dark kitchen shop, although we do open the doors to the customers now, it takes all its stock from the main one. They do all the prep, they cut all the chips, they cut all the fish, and it supplies everything. So it was never really a standalone shop by itself. So really our Exeter shop is the first multiple that that's how it feels. And it's making that step towards running more than one. It was in Exmouth, it just felt like it was one back room with just two different counters with a mile apart. It's just the challenge of learning how to run multiple shops. We've always had lots of staff. The new shop probably added another 25 with drivers and everything. But yeah, it's the shop itself isn't the headache. It's the extra staff, the extra workload. Kelly is essentially our full-time HR person, and it takes all her time to look after everybody. You would realise how much babysitting, sort of 40, 50-year-old employees need. Everybody has their own challenges and brings it to work and dumps it in your lap and wants your help, and it can be tough sometimes.
I remember seeing a video with Jeff Bezos, and bear in mind he's like multi-billionaire, all these sites all over the world, and he said everything's a people problem. Everything's and it makes you think, because everything else can be fixed. Like, I've got a meeting today at 2:00 to fix an online printer system that we've got a problem with. Like, that will be fixed. That I don't lose any sleep about technology. Like, we've rebuilt a website. We've created so many integrations, and don't get me wrong, in the process of building those systems, and you guys have done this with your online systems, in the process of building those systems, don't get me wrong, they're tough, they're challenging, but there's always a solution. But there isn't always an immediate solution with people. And I find that handling staffing problems or staffing issues or whatever it may be, the complexity of people problems is the tricky thing in business, I find.
Absolutely. Yeah, couldn't agree more.
How do you guys handle that, having like 750 staff?
To be quite honest with you, it's difficult. It's every day you're striving to do better, and whatever you do is not quite enough. You're constantly looking to do more, to look after your people, to build better systems, and create that right culture that allows them to thrive, develop, and want to be there. It's tough, I think. There's sort of milestones that I think you go through that make these things easier to manage. I think the leap from 1 store to 2 is huge. I think there's various milestones along that way. For us, we feel like a milestone is getting to 50 sites. When we get to that point, I mean, we've already got, a team of HR and marketing team, but I'd say for a business of our size, we're at the low end of the resources. Once we get to that 50 sites and we dilute that cost base, we'll be able to really sort of upgrade those departments and make that all a bit easier. So there's various milestones along the way, I think, that you work towards. It's probably quite brutal for yourself and Kelly, Tim, sort of having to be everything, the HR, the marketing, and the business mate is not going to afford a head of HR, a HR team, or a marketing team. So you do have to do it all yourself, and that I'm sure is very draining. You get to a point where you get those people and you get those departments, and you've got several departments in a business like ours, and then you don't always get the right people running those departments and things can go wrong. So there's lots of barriers and milestones along the way. And I think the truth of it is you just work hard at it every single day.
Yeah.
So the bad news, Tim, nothing's going to get better for you anytime soon.
Sorry.
It gets gradually worse in different ways, but soon, what Paul is saying, that if you carry on growing, it won't be your problem for long, it'll be someone else's problem. So, joking aside, people problems are the worst, like they are, because, it is just one of those things. But I think, with solid rules and, clear lines and clear communication, I think these things can get better.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of, pride to be had from seeing someone grow with your business that, is often, I'd like to think in our industry as a whole, actually, we're quite good at getting people that come through the door that's 16, 17 years old, never had a job, and we develop them into leaders, not just fish and chip fryers, but leaders. And even if they choose not to stay in our industry, they go on to be better at whatever it is they go on to, because they've worked in our businesses, understanding how to service customers and look after people and work as a team. So I think we do some great stuff that we can be proud of too.
Yeah, I agree.
I feel it's such a big thing, when I see people like shop owners, that is, advertising for staff, I think one of the key things they never talk about is the fact that if you're aiming this at younger people or the parents of younger people, I'd almost be saying to those people, think of all of these skills you can learn working in a fish and chip shop. Like, I feel like I'm a confident person talking to people. I can sit here and do this, and it's not because of the job I have today. It's because of the job I had when I worked for my dad, when I was serving customers at 14, 15 years old, when my dad would say, you've got to serve customers and you've got to talk to them about their day and you've got to ask them how they are. And you can't talk about God and you can't talk about politics. You've got to talk about everything else. And I remember, I was talking to a friend of mine who's got a nephew of his working for him, and he just says he won't serve, he's too shy, he won't do this. And I was like, so make him serve and make him talk to customers, leave him in the shop on his own. Like, you've got to push people. And I think it is one of those jobs that really open up people's personality, because you'll see it, like you say, a 15, 16-year-old comes to work for you and they leave when they're 19, 20, 21, or even stay with you and become managers. They are actually very different people. They become parts of you to some degree. And
yeah. You often get feedback sometimes from our teams, it's widely spoken of that the younger Gen Z, they don't want to talk to people. They don't want to interact with people. They want to go on kiosks, and there's a lot of them that don't want that interaction. And, these people come for a job with us, and sometimes they struggle initially. And you see them turn up on the first day, quiet, sometimes timid, and within literally 3 months, they flourish, and the personality change is huge. And the parents will often come to you and say, oh my God, they've got so much more confidence now. It's great. I think it's great for people.
Absolutely. Look, we all do things we don't want to do. It's about personal growth. They don't know that they need to be pushed in that department or pushed in that respect. But actually they do. We all do. We all need to put ourselves in very difficult situations sometimes. And I don't know, I look back on those days fondly, talking to people about things, serving. You didn't realise how easy life was to some degree back then, just working for my dad, serving customers. It was, you do look at it and think, I was becoming someone without knowing. And because it's a real art learning how to talk to people. I could talk to anybody about anything. I'm sure you all know that. But I think early in your years, it's learning to speak. But then as you get a bit older, it's learning to listen. I think that's another key skill. Because when you become a manager and so on, you talk less and listen more. Whereas when you're part of a team, it's all about talking more. Well, listening and learning, but you need to learn to effectively speak.
It always amazes me the basic life skills that you have to teach these young people. And we get it. We get that. Many parents have said to us that we've turned them into different people, and they've really come out of their shell and grown into great sort of young adults.
I think one of the things to that point, Tim, what I always see is that in whether it's fish and chip groups or fish and chip owner circles, we blame the kids, and And actually, I think that's misappropriated blame. I think the blame should be on the parents. Because they come and they're like, I don't know how to make tea. I don't know how to mop.
Yeah, they've never mopped the floor. They've never washed up. They don't know.
You haven't got a dishwasher?
Yeah.
I know how to load it.
Yeah, but it's almost like we then blame the kid, whereas really it's the parent. Like I've got a 10-year-old and a 5-year-old, and like we're constant. Move your plate, wash your plate, do this, wash your face. I'm very like. I'm a parent that gives a lot of feedback. I call it feedback. They hate it. But the point is I'm saying to them all the time, like, you've got to make sure when you're out of this house, you're a good citizen. That you go into someone else's house, you wash your hands, you move your plate, you do what they say. Learn how to clean up after yourself. Even as a 5-year-old yesterday tipped loads of biscuits all over the place. What did I do? Made him pick them all up. And it sounds awful that I'm making a 5-year-old do that, but he did do the mess. And actually, whereas I think society almost lets employers and schools now say, oh, I'll let them bring up my kids. I'll let Tim and I'll let Krispies and Fishnchickn bring up my kids. But no, it's like you've got to do your bit. But I do agree with that sentiment that we are shaping the future people for their next job, or even the job to stay with us, hopefully, because they love it so much. Which gets us on to parental guidance and the government treating us like children. I'm only joking. But so what did you guys think of the budget initially? If we start with you, Tim, initially you sort of watched the budget. Did you take time out to watch it, and did it dawn on you anything immediately?
Yeah, we did. We did watch it. Sort of probably more intently than any other budget that we've watched before. We knew that something was coming with national insurance, but was quite shocked at the fact that they've lowered the threshold. That's really the killer for us. And obviously we knew that the minimum wage was going to go up. I mean, Kelly's been panicking about it ever since. I'm sort of take it more in my stride a little bit. But yeah, we had to sit down and work out what it's going to cost us, and it is going to cost us, a fair bit. We think it's going to be in the region of about 45 to 50,000. 22,000 of that is going to be the national insurance, and it's not the 1.3 or 1.2% increase, whatever it is. It is purely because of them lowering the threshold. So all those people that drive for us, that were doing 2-3 nights a week and not meeting the threshold, are now going to be meeting the threshold. So it just draws so many more staff that weren't paying NI into it.
What about you, Paul? What was it like for you?
Very similar to Tim, watching it more intently this time round. Thinking, mindful that the government, making big statements about driving growth, and you sort of think about the challenges that we've had this year. We're all still suffering from higher energy costs. Potato prices have increased significantly. Yes, general inflation has eased, but it's coming from a very high base and it's still increasing. There's very low consumer confidence out there. Disposable income has been squeezed massively, and the cost of living crisis is real, isn't it? With people's mortgages being so much higher, they're really being careful where they spend their money, and so all of that has kind of led to, I think, in 2024, this kind of big fight for transactions and customer numbers. So you've got all this kind of stuff on your mind and thinking, well, how are they going to help us with this for 2025? And I'm looking into that already, knowing that, we've got our energy costs fixed, but they're still 40% higher than what they was before. Oil prices have gone up significantly. Fish now, with the problems we've got in our industry, with quotas being cut in the Barents Sea, that's going to go up by about 10% at least to us in the early part of the year. So, a bit of help would have been nice, right, with all of the challenges we've had this year and what we've got coming. But the budget effect to us was actually huge. But, I think in terms of the minimum wage, most people could probably accept that a levelling up between the 18 and 20-year-olds to the sort of the living wage of 21 plus is something that we should be working towards. I might say that it's a fairly aggressive approach at almost 17% increase on that. But generally speaking, I think most people knew that was going to happen and kind of accepted that. It's, as Tim said, it's the increase in the employer's NI, but particularly the threshold change. And for our business, it adds up to, a hell of a lot of money. It's going to add around about 10% to our wage costs next year, which is huge. I'm also really concerned about the knock-on effect to that. So, for example, just to stand still and to cover that cost, I would have to increase our prices by 8% just to stand still and cover that cost. But the impact on the supply chain, I think, is going to be pretty profound as well. I mean, from your position, Stel, working with various different people, bringing supply into you got to be thinking as a supplier for the industry, there's some costs there that you're going to need to pass on, right? So I think this is going to be really tough. I think you've mentioned this in previous podcasts with Mitchell's Potatoes that, I agree with Stuart that we've kind of almost met a ceiling in what customers will pallet for the price of fish and chips. Anything that we add on now, I think if we're not careful, is going to drive down volume.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we've already seen a decrease. Our sales are down this year from last year. Footfall is down. We are the most expensive fish and chip shop in Exmouth, and there is definitely, I think, a ceiling to the price. But we do need to put our prices up to counteract that. But then, how many people is that going to put off? That is always the worry. So, we are looking at this in two ways: that we need to cut costs as well as increase the prices, because we can't put it all on the price. From anything, so seeing if we can get our credit card supplier to cut that off, cut the costs down a little bit. We're just looking into every avenue that we can to try and reduce costs, which in turn is making us, it's not giving us growth. It's making us want to recoil and trim down and slim down and do things cheaper. And that's not growth.
No.
I think one thing that's notable though is that you've both sort of hit on volume and when you see like the multinationals doing offers at the moment, like the KFC, Burger King, McDonald's, even McDonald's, which is strange, like they're doing like family meal meals, and which is I've never seen McDonald's do that. I think they've seen that we need to do this to drive growth. So you've got all these multinationals doing that. You've got probably competitors that aren't shifting because they don't need to at the moment, or they don't know they need to, because a lot of the times some accountants won't tell them until their end of year, which is way down the line. And I do think sometimes on this podcast we are the canary in the coal mine, because I was talking about wage increases pre-election. I was talking about that. Obviously, we know about wage increases. You don't need to be intelligent to know that wage increases are coming every year. But I do think we were talking about a lot of these things early on. And I remember like talking to Andrew Crook about this early on as well. And he was like, well, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But it was really clear early on that all of these changes were going to come. We didn't know how. We didn't know why. But I think we sort of knew that something bad was in the pipeline, and they were true to their word. When they said it's going to be bad, I thought, wow, politically you shouldn't be saying that. But who knows? Maybe they were just honest, or maybe they knew they were going to get absolutely, called out on it. But how can you then, Tim's looking at reducing costs. I know you are, Paul, always. So that has the opposite effect of driving growth. So do you think the government looks at this? And I know we're only one segment, but if everyone's looking at this, then surely that doesn't have the effect of creating growth.
I don't see where it comes from. I'm really struggling to see. Well, certainly in the hospitality industry, I'm struggling to understand where that growth is going to come from. We're certainly slowing down our growth, if not stopping it for certainly the next six months to a year. And also, it's got a knock-on effect to other things. It will reduce capex a little bit. So, other service partners that would have more business from us will have less. So, yeah, I'm kind of struggling to understand where that growth is going to come from. And look, the everyday person is going to be paying a lot more for everything come April. So disposable income and that fight for customer transaction is going to get harder. I think that world of offers is going to get bigger.
I do wonder. I was reading a report earlier because I've got nothing else to do. But I was reading a report earlier, and it said that it was an independent report, and it said they estimate, and it's still a bit early, but they estimate that with the wage increases, that they expect 0.5 to 1.1% inflation just based on that. And I thought, well, actually, that's not crazy. But like you said, we've started high and we're coming back, so it's not like we're in a low place. One upside from staff earning more, or everyone's staff earning more, is that you'd hope they've got more spending power. So do you guys look at how that could probably help? Because if everyone has more money, could they be spending it in places like yours?
I just don't think anybody will have more money because it's the knock-on effect. The prices go up to pay for the wage increase. Therefore, at the end of the day, you're not going to have any more surplus money in your pocket than you had before.
Yeah, I agree. We've not really seen this in the past. I mean, I looked back, funny enough, about wage increases since 2022 and how they've changed in that period. And obviously, this year we had the living wage start at 21 instead of 23, which obviously there's a big cost to that. And the 18 to 20 brackets has gone up by 42% just since 2022. 42%. The 21 plus bracket has gone up 33% in the last couple of years. And no one sort of experienced huge volumes of extra transactions on the back of any of this happening. I think there's other factors that come into it as well. If you look over the last couple of years, the amount of different cuisines that are now available and in competition with us is just exploded. There's such a low point of entry, isn't there, for a lot of these as well? For there's burger concepts, dark kitchens, and I've said it before. Our competition used to be the 20, 30 takeaways that were within two miles of us. Now it's the 125 that will deliver into the postcode of the shop that we're in, as well as those other shops, So, and you'd think a positive thing for in some aspects might be that they're, the best they're going to survive, and there'll be some consolidation here because, I can't see how a lot of these businesses are going to be able to sustain some of these costs.
I know it's a unique case, but a relative of mine has a shop in Leicester, and near the shop over COVID, they've got like this there's a park with a little bandstand in it. It's tiny, and someone's covered it all up. They've got permission, and over COVID, they got permission to use it as like a little coffee shop. Because everybody over COVID would have been they wanted to go out for walks, whereas now we've all gone back to our pre-COVID ways, I guess. And now, because they've obviously struggled, because everyone has gone back to their pre-COVID ways, someone's took it over, and they're doing hot food, Deliveroo and Uber, and this little bandstand. That I know it's not completely targeting fish and chips, but it is literally this. Everyone using all these aggregators now. You can, I see it. That this little place is doing it. There's someone that does it from home on a Friday and a Saturday in Peterborough, doing nice burgers and so on. And you think, well, everyone's chipping away so much more than before when everyone had to have a physical site. You do need a physical site, but a physical commercial site. And are these places being checked? And I saw on a mobile street food group that I'm on earlier, someone goes, we've got this trailer for sale, and it's just completely chipboard inside. And as you know, anybody that runs a kitchen, you can't have chipboard anywhere. And then he goes, sold it. And you're thinking, who's bloody bought that? Like, it's chipboard. Like, you can't prepare food in a room made out of chipboard, and yet, it's not fireproof, it's not food safe, it's nothing, it's just a mess. And you think that you're right, the barrier to entry now for the people that join Deliveroo, Uber Eats, or have a trailer, it is so low that causes problems for people that are actually doing it right to some degree.
Yeah, and I think the aggregators are sort of starting to take some responsibility for that and are doing a bit more to vet the businesses that they put on their online menus. But I guess it's also, yeah, most local pubs are doing delivery. I mean, hell, even the BP station does delivery. You can get a coffee and a sausage roll from the BP station. The co-op's doing delivery. Everyone's doing delivery. On top of that, you've got the aggregators on a weekly basis sending you discounts. I get one every week from Uber, 50% off your next 5 orders. You get your 50% off Domino's. The amount of offers, if you're sort of being careful, as people are, with how you spend your money, there's plenty of offers to choose from out there, isn't there?
Absolutely. I think this is why I'm convinced, and I don't know what you think, Tim. This is why I'm convinced that it's not just hot food; it's all of out-of-home food. I'm convinced that people eat out in the UK more than they've ever done. And I'm not saying fine dine restaurant. I mean, going to Greg's, going to a normal sandwich shop, going to a normal baker's, getting food made for you from the likes of Tesco's. And this is why I do think, I've been saying it for a long time, that I really think that the way that the VAT structure is, it really would make sense to apply it to all of out-of-home food. It seems logical to me that that if you can go to Tesco and buy a ready-made sandwich for £4.50, that is an enormous profit for Tesco and the sandwich maker, because there's no VAT, and they know that people are used to paying VAT, so they go all the way to the top. And you just think, fish and chips, Indian food, Chinese food, for the most part, all collect VAT. And I think there's a huge discrepancy there.
I totally agree with that. I think that would be the right way to do it. And even if all that meant was, by applying it to all of those situations, the VAT dropped for everyone by 1 or 2%, it would make a huge difference with managing all of these other costs. But I'm sure net-wise, it would be a hugely positive thing in terms of cash coming into the government.
I'd argue that I'm not an economist. This is cigarette packet calculation. But if you're adding VAT to all out of home food, and whilst we're there, sweets, chocolates, and cakes, because they're deemed as snacks, not food, I would say that the majority of those the companies that all sell those products are also very legit, which means that you're going to see a very high intake of receipts. So I would say it's a no-brainer. The likes of Tesco aren't going to fiddle the books to hide how much is coming in. You know what I mean?
No.
So they're just going to flip a switch on their their head office and change it from 0 rated to 20% rated, and there you go. They've started collecting money. So. But they're never going to do that. I just can't see it.
It's just going to it would take massive reform, and I don't think any government at the moment is willing to look into that.
You've just hit the nail on the head, though, Tim. The maddening thing is the word reform, and Labour's come in with a decent majority, which gives them the ability to tackle these really juicy things.
Yeah.
And instead, what have they come and done? Come in and tinkered around the edges. And I just can't understand that type of thinking when you've actually got the power to do it. But and also chatting to the people, they say, look, when you're doing something really big and juicy, you've got to do it in year 1, so you can see how it goes by year 2 and 3, and then make the changes in year 4 before you've got an election. Whereas if you do it in year 2, you probably won't be able to do it. You'll run out of time.
Yeah.
And then it ends up getting binned before the next election.
Yeah. Phil, can I just ask you a quick question about the budget? And, from your perspective, I'm interested to understand, as a wholesaler, how's that going to affect you? And what sort of changes do you think you'll make?
So we've always got like a long-term vision. So probably my vision probably is ahead of this anyway, in some respects. But in terms of us lifting prices because of that, we probably won't have to because of that. Our price increases are probably more led by ingredients, because we've really got a good employee to sales ratio. So we're looking at the implementations we're making on our side at the operational level is increasing technology to get more out of the people that are already there, because there's a lot of time inputting data at the moment. So, for example, an order comes in, someone manually has to look at it. We've been implementing a system over the last 3 days to get rid of all of that, so it does it automatically. And that will save us 25 to 30% of manpower daily, which frees them up to do something else, which means I don't need another person for a significant amount of time. We are also, which if anyone listening to this will know, we're building a factory at the moment. We're building our first blending room out of our sort of multi-step project. Tim's seen it, actually. He came round. Well, did you go in the blending room, Tim? Did I open the room?
Yeah.
So I can't remember. And so we are sort of growing in that. But I don't really align those politically, if that makes sense. So, and to make it clear where our price increase do come from, it's from our main cost, actually, which is commodity prices. So if the price of flour goes up, then the price of batter has to go, or anything that has flour. If the price of rice starch goes up, then our pre-dust have to go up. But on the same token, when they come down, we do sort of reflect that in offers and so on. So, yeah, I think that we're probably going to employ next year 2 more people, all being well. But by that point, all of our new systems will be implemented. Without those systems being implemented, we'd probably employ 4 people. But again, that's not a political motivation. It's all about being efficient. And I think for us, it's like I just saw it as it's dead time. People sitting on a computer inputting data. It's just dead to me. Like I'd rather they were doing something really productive, and I don't think them sitting there looking at Tim's order or your order and thinking, oh, how many boxes is this? We might as well do that once, and then let the computer do it after that automatically. So yeah, but I think I try and remove my goals from the political side. Always have done. But and I tell you why. That's because we opened this business, Ceres. We founded this business in 2007/2008, and I remember everyone, even my dad's accountant, saying to me, "You will go bankrupt. You are not going to make it through this." And I was like, "Okay." So I think sometimes you just sort of become oblivious anyway. So, but does that answer your question? Actually,
yeah, I guess I suppose you're quite exposed to the live market price of flour, aren't you? So that's going to dictate more than anything, I guess. Isn't
personally, it? When it's a flour product, personally, yeah, absolutely. And obviously, if again, it's a global market when it comes to like onion, garlic, all of those commodities as well. And
do you expect volume to go down on the back of pressures?
We hope not. But to be fair, this year has also been tricky in itself anyway, because years ago, and I think I maybe have had this conversation recently with you, Tim, but like years ago, you sort of knew that January, February, March was going to be quiet, April, and all the way up to Christmas, you'd sort of you'd get peak at Christmas, and then you'd drop again and start that cycle all over again. Whereas that's changed. So a lot of our business has changed. So we supply the likes of Fry's Pride, Tea Quality, and so on, but we also have an online store. So now we've got a measure of what's going on like they would. Whereas before we'd be slightly behind the curve because we only understood what they did, but 3 weeks later. Whereas now we sort of have a live snapshot of what's going on. But what we've seen in some months this year is you'll have an absolutely smashing week. I mean, days where you've sent hundreds of thousands of parcels and pallets, and you think, whoa, this is a really strong week. And then you'll have 3 weeks of plodding, and you think, what was that about then? And so again, there's no sort of rhyme or reason, and then but the information comes back from chip shop owners like yourself that pattern is just completely removed, and whereas it's sort of weird, and there's no real algorithm that can tell you what's really going on. You've just got to sort of shoot from the hip. So you've always got to make sure you've got stock ready always, because you just don't know. And I've seen it where we've seen it where on some of our products where you'll go from steady sales, which is normal, and then you'll sell 6 weeks worth of stock in 3 days, and you end up out of stock. So our gravy happened to us recently, as you know, Tim, because you ordered it, and in 3 days we sold all of our stock, and we don't know why. There was every order was case of gravy, case of gravy, case of gravy, case of gravy, case of gravy. And you think to yourself, but what's shifted? And you ask around and you say to people, what's happened? And everyone just said, we had a busy week. And there's no more data than that. Collecting data from fish and chip shops is either it's shit, sorry to swear, but it's an adult podcast, it's shit, or it's great. There's never no nuance, really. So I don't really seem to get, actually, I'm 25% up or I'm 16% down, or there's never anything like that. It's either terrible or it's brilliant. There's never any middle ground. So anyone listening to this,
I mean, where we would order from, tea quality or fries fried twice a week, my manager would probably go on and order enough stock from Ceres, because they've got to do it themselves. They've got to go online and do it, to last 2 or 3 weeks. So maybe that's, what you see is, all of a sudden everybody's filling their stock rooms, and then for a couple of weeks, and then there's nothing for you.
But it's an interesting trend, because I kind of see that a little bit within our transactions, that you can have those weeks, a period of weeks where you go, yeah, we're really doing great against last year, and then you have a period where it's a struggle, and it's quite volatile, the trend. And for us, certainly the early part of the year, in particular, start of this year, was really difficult, and we've had to sort of do quite a lot to sharpen our pencil to sort of drive those volumes back. And hopefully certainly by the end of this year, we hope to be, as a minimum, back on volumes for what we was doing last year. But it's been a battle, and it's certainly been up and down all the way through.
I think one of the things I've always tried to do, to expand on some of this as well, is we've tried to simplify the process of anything that we do within our business. So where there's any difficulty or what's the word? I forgot the word now. It's completely left my mind. Friction. I hate friction within the business, whether it's how people order and pay or how we pack it on our side. So if there's something that doesn't quite fit operationally, we'll spend time to make it work. We'll design a new system, order new boxes, change the boxes that products made in. So a while ago, our gravy was 10 kilo. I'll use gravy as an example because we can use that. And the curry was 10 kilo tubs. We realise actually, well, it wastes a lot of space. We need a big box. Now we can get 20 kilos in the same box. Yeah. 4 boxes perfectly. We pass that saving on to the customer, and also because we can pack that and ship that, the less damages. Buckets, they get damaged in transit. You see it sometimes. The way that the polyethylene or HDPE breaks, it hits something, it just snaps. And I do think that it's all about reducing friction. And it probably leads me to my sort of a question I had for both of you, that how do you guys look in your business to remove friction, but make things operationally run better? Or do you ever look at your menu and say, well, actually, let's get rid of that because, I need a staff member to run out the back and make that. Whereas I'd rather have that staff member out the front. Do you ever look at your businesses in that respect?
Yeah, it's a really good question, Stel. Tim touched on it, that part of managing the increases, I don't think it's going to be wise to pass all of that on straight away. So you start delving into efficiency and what you can do in all aspects of your business. And for us, one of the key strategies around hopefully how we can save some of that money instead of passing it on to the customers is around our technology stack from start to finish, really. From the same challenges you have, Stel, we've got invoices coming in and we've got semi-automated processes, but we can massively improve that. And then our finance team can then turn their heads on, instead of just processing, they can look at delivering insights, granular insights that really help our managers in the stores drive the business forward through reporting. But also we're looking to upgrade our EPOS system, being frictionless. Use that terminology for Gen Z is absolutely a prerequisite in terms of how they order, where they order from. So they're all key parts actually of our strategy for trying to be more efficient. Even the basics, which you don't really see too much in the fish and chip industry, of having a digital loyalty system that will work across all of your channels, click and collect, in-store, delivery. All those basic things I think are going to be absolutely key. And then in terms of the operations in the store, I think sort of post-COVID, everyone kind of was looking at everything they were doing, going through that, inflation roaring where it did in terms of portion controls and efficiency, management of oil and waste. they're all kind of stuff I think that we've worked quite hard on in the industry over the last couple of years that I guess you just go back over and revisit them again and just keep sharpening them up again all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I think that times like this, like Paul touched on, is that they just make you re-look at your business. Like COVID, we diversified, we adapted. We were already on the online platform, but now over 60% of our orders come through to online. We're going to be looking at introducing kiosks to see whether we can streamline. And I think that people at Gen Z don't want to talk to people when they come in their shop. So it's looking at everything. We've taken items off the menu that consume too much time, that we don't sell enough of. And I think you just got to constantly be looking at what you do. We at the moment we have never ever discounted or done meal deals or done extra value meals or whatever you want to call them. And we yesterday or this week have been sort of developing 4 or 5 meal deals for the whole family, inspired by McDonald's. We've been looking at Churchills' website just to see what people are doing, and I think we always make the most profit during our summer months when we are doing volume, and that's what we need to be trying to increase on. Like Stel has always said, that fish and chips is a volume game, and although you need to make your margins, you're just so much more profitable when you are putting volume through the fryers.
Yeah, I do think that's a benefit this industry has. Like if compared to, let's say, a burger business or a pizza business, because if you've got a pizza business, there's only so much throughput you can put through those ovens before you need another oven. If you've got an oven with a conveyor belt, I'm just guessing, but let's say it's 6 minutes a pizza, you can't shove another one in and another one in. You can't, whereas if you know how to use your frying range of choice, if you know all the best bits about it, when it's at its peak, how it does this, how you can sneak in another fish when you're really busy, all these little things add up to extra profit. So, Fred Capel, and it's a shame he can't be with us today. He was meant to, but he couldn't. But he always says to me, it doesn't cost you anymore to serve another couple of customers within that hour slot. If you break up every working day into hours, like let's say 12 till 2, but if you serve an extra 3 customers every hour, that adds up to a lot of money over the year. And I think it's so important that we do remember we're a volume business, and we have the apparatus, the frying ranges, that frying medium, that hot oil of frying product. It really suits that fast cooking. Whereas, I do think other businesses probably don't have that advantage.
And I think I used to always think of deals as a negative thing, really. Why would you give somebody who's coming into your shop something at a cheaper price when they probably would have bought it at the original price? But it's not about that, is it? It's about getting the people in the door in the first place.
Yeah.
Yes, it is a negative thing that if everybody that came were going to come in anyway, do get it for cheaper. But it's about driving new sales and extra sales that you wouldn't have got before.
Yeah, but it's certainly a balancing act, though, Tim, to try and achieve that, because sometimes you can drive more volume but cannibalise your gross profit. So it's a difficult one to get right. Actually, we've found that works quite well is doing exceptionally good deals rather than just doing okay deals every day of the week. Yeah. We do exceptionally good deals, but they're restricted on particular items for set days of the week. So the offers will be Monday, Wednesday and Saturday. And, for argument's sake, you make a good point. You're discounting food that everyone was going to come in and pay full price for. The typical one that over the years, people will discount sausage and chips for a period. We sell in the fish and chip industry huge volumes of it, don't we? So just to discount that, it's probably going to be have a negative impact on us. But what we chose to do is we do a deal where you get 4 sausage and chip meals on a Monday. It's less than a tenner, $9.99. It's a certain type of customer that's going to come in and want 4 sausage and chips. You've got to be a certain size group of people eating it. But what it does do is it sort of gives you a real good call to action on your marketing and your advertising to scream and shout about a value proposition. And we found that really gathers momentum over time.
Yeah.
It's also, if you can, trying to do products that you can stand by with all this competition and kind of go, I can do that better than anyone else. I'd like to think in our stores, one of the things we do amazingly well is our chicken products. And so generally speaking, our competitors don't do it the same size, the same value. And so we target that product on one day of the week, heavily discount it. It's less than a £5. And the volumes go through the roof. But of course, whilst they're coming in, they're buying other things. And then the next time they tend to come in more frequently. And the next time they come in, they buy that product when it's not discounted because it's a great product.
Yeah.
We see a lot of customers at the minute. We see it when times like this sort of creep in. We see a lot of people buy the fish cake mix because what they do is they're using all the trim to get their fish portion right, and they think, well, I'm not going to bin it, and then they can be extra vigilant on that fish size, not give anything away that they don't need to, and they'll put offers on the fish cake because they see that as free fish. And I know it's not free fish, but it is free fish to some degree because it would have probably just got served with the fish. So yeah, I think offers, but it doesn't mean, and I think the dirty word to some degree, offers or discounts, it comes from probably the misuse, like Paul said or alluded to, that it is difficult and some people just are cheap and big portions all the time, and they probably don't need to do offers because they're cheap all the time and they do offers all the time. Technically, it's like an ongoing offer, isn't it? If you're big portioned and cheap. So, but when you're doing your level, I guess your business, you need to sort of be a bit sharper and
the volume can really, you can really do some damage if you get those deals wrong. I think one of the most interesting things I found about the offers we've done since July is the impact that they've had on changing our sales mix between delivery and in-store. Because the offers have been so good and they've been really targeted at driving people in-store where we earn the most money, we've done that massively. And we've basically increased our sales mix by 6% in store, and delivery has dropped by 6%, which has meant the commissions that we pay has dropped significantly. And that we wasn't actually doing that, strategically planning with these deals to drive more people to come in to the store as opposed to delivery. But the knock-on effect has been really positive for us.
So a good offer in store can drive traffic through in the physical sense. And it does make you wonder, guys. Do you not have any of those offers available on your delivery platforms?
They are available on the delivery platforms, but they're nowhere near as good value. And all the advertising that we do on social media and for our database that we send emails and text messages out to is all focused on the takeaway.
Right.
Do you guys miss the days of pre-COVID when people just queued up, gave you your money and left? Like, I know delivery was it was a lot of people did do deliveries, but now it's everyone does deliveries. Like, whereas before, like, all you had to do, like, and if I imagine myself in your shop, Tim, for a moment, because I've been there, but like pre-COVID is all you do is just keep frying product. You knew what you had to do. You know 90% of your fish sales, so you just keep going. You weren't thinking on cooking to order to this degree. Whereas now I feel like with all chip shops and anybody that's using aggregates have almost become, to some degree, restaurant chefs. Like, that you literally are cooking to order. Whereas before it was just putting product in a fryer and it was leaving as fast as possible. And to some degree that was a very efficient way of working.
I mean, we've always cooked to order. I would argue the fact that our dark kitchen shop is actually very efficient, because we know how many, if we you can pre-see that the delivery slots are, because we do all the deliveries ourselves there. You can see that all the delivery slots are full, so that every 15 minutes, 4 or 5 deliveries, whatever we've got it set to, are going to come through. And every 5 minutes, we get 2 click and collects. And that's all they have to deal with. It actually disrupts it there when customers walk in the door, because it disrupts the flow, and you've got to try and fit those customers in within the deliveries and the click and collects. But yes, I do. You always long for the simpler days of deliveries. Is whether you're paying aggregator fees or you're doing it yourself. I mean, there is not a lot of difference in how much it costs you. We always get people sort of complaining why we charge a delivery charge and we have our prices inflated. They think that we're being greedy, but actually doing deliveries costs us in the region of £85,000 a year to do the delivery, with cars, insurance, wages. There's no longer they don't seem to understand that there's a fryer server, and now you're having to employ a third person with extra costs of fuel and everything to produce that delivery so that they can sit at home and have the convenience of it. So yeah, I do long for the days of before click and collect. Even though it's easy, it saves. We only have one person on the till rather than we used to have 2 tills going, because 60% of our orders come through online, so you don't need that extra till. I quite like the idea of if we introduce self-service kiosks, whether you could transfer that remaining 40%, maybe 10% or 20% of it onto self-service kiosks. So you're then redirecting that member of staff who was just in the summer is literally for 5 hours stood on a till taking order after order. They can then move across and help wrap the orders that are coming through, and reutilize them, not cut them out, but repurpose them.
I tell you one thing I've noticed, though, because I talk about aggregators a lot, and I talk to you guys about offers that you do in aggregators, and I'm friends with Charlie Collins, and he'll sort of tell me, show me deals, but I've never used Just Eat, Uber Eats. I've never used it. I've never downloaded the delivery. I don't have the apps. Like, I'm still quite old school. If we want Chinese food, I'll ring them, I'll go collect it. Like, I don't know why. I think that's something that's still in my mind, that I'd rather go collect it. I don't even think of the value. They probably do me over there anyway. I don't even think about it. But it's just, I've never downloaded them ever. And I probably should, maybe just to see what it's like, to know what it's like from a customer's point of view. And also where our warehouse is. I remember once I went online to order a pizza for the lads with Domino's. No one delivers there. No, not one aggregator delivers there because we're out in the sticks. So we sort of don't see any of this really in my life. However, one thing I will say where technology has made my life easier is if I go to how I think about how I used to go to McDonald's before. I go to the counter and order it. Now I don't. I walk straight in, go straight to the table, order my food on the app, and they bring it over. And I think I can see how technology makes things easier. But I can also see how it's made people lazy too. They sit at home expecting a great offer, but actually you can't have a great offer like Tim says. Like you said, Paul, you've got to come in for the great offer, and you've got to use your legs a little bit.
Yeah, well, I think that is changing a little bit, where people's disposable income has really been squeezed. I think that mix, certainly over the last year, more people are definitely coming into the stores. Even prior to us doing the offers that we started in July, it just sort of escalated from there. But generally speaking, I think people are probably a bit more prepared now to make a bit more effort to get the value.
Yeah, I think so. How do you think the likes of the trade organisations have done from the point of getting the message across to government, and what's their response been like after government? I don't know what trade organisations you're all involved with, but from an outside point of view, how do you think it's all been?
I think UK hospitality have done an exceptional job. Kate Nichols, I think, is outstanding. The work she's done to really bring those key impacts to hospitality to life, I think has been as good as what we could expect to achieve. Whether the government are actually going to listen to any of it, I'm very sceptical. Obviously, Andrew Crook at the NFFF, I think he works incredibly hard. for the industry. I mean, I've never known anyone to committed or to put in so much time and effort. But again, I'm quite cynical as to what we're actually going to achieve on that front with the government, if I'm completely honest with you.
I think one argument before was that government didn't care. And now we've had a budget from a different government, or at least a different party that's in government. I think the thought is maybe now no government cares. Or is it just that this agenda isn't on theirs? Is it just that there's a big mismatch here?
Yeah, it's just so much to cover there, isn't there? It's with the problems that we've got financially as a country, I'm just not sure that they see the challenges that we're having as the top of their list, and the battles for Andrew and Kate to try and get that to the top of their agenda are really tough. I think UK Hospitality have done a great job to make that as easy as possible for people by, there's even letters on their website. You kind of, they'll automatically send for you, if you like, to your local MP and stuff. I think all of that kind of stuff is going to help. And I think we should, even though it's tough, we shouldn't stop trying, and we shouldn't stop fighting for it. But making realistic change right now, I think, is almost impossible.
What's your thoughts, Tim?
I think what Kate Nichols said on your last podcast was hit the nail on the head. Is the government accepts the fact that when they bring in these budgets, that there's going to be a certain amount of loss and a certain amount of failure, and that's just something that they accept. And I think that they think that the hospitality industry, like she said, will just bounce back. And one closes down and a new one will open. So in their minds, it doesn't matter. I also don't think that they understand what the 100% what their implications, what they put in place actually do to small businesses. I think they see the fact that this budget's going to cost someone like Tesco's over £1 billion, and they just sit there and think, well, they can afford it, or they'll put the prices up to counteract some of it. In terms of federations, I'm not a member of the NFFF anymore, and I haven't really heard or seen anything that has happened that they've done after the budget. So I don't really know what they're doing.
I think one of the things, the Federation, I wonder if an organisation that small can actually impact government. I think, can they get the message there? And I'd like to have him on again. So we had him on a few weeks ago, actually. Well, it was last week, and he had recording issues. His computer kept going off. So I don't want to say too much of what he said, because I want to save it to actually get it on record. But I think the problem they're always going to have at the NFFF is that they are a small organisation. And I think UK Hospitality is larger, and they're also paid very well. They've also got great members list. And I think when you've got those, because we've had Alan Simpson on from UK Hospitality as well, and again, another person who's quite articulate about the problems. And I do think that if they can't get government to listen, like, what chance has NFFF got? On an Andrew Crook note, on a NFFF note, I do think they have been quieter post the election. I don't know what that is. I don't know whether they're expecting brighter news. I don't know. But they have been quieter. And again, it's a matter of resources. Me and you were talking about this, Tim, before setting up. Like, I think people in business don't understand that resources aren't infinite. It's a commodity in all our businesses that nobody ever considers as a finite product. And I think that maybe that's something that's come to the realization that their resources aren't as abundant as they thought, or they don't use them as efficiently. You mentioned he works really hard, Paul. I'd agree with that, but are his resources being used effectively? And like any business, like yours, like James is in the business, Hughes is in the business, Kelly's in your business, Tim. Everyone's in my business. Resources, it's a fundamental thing in my mindset that if they're not used efficiently and effectively, then it is literally water going through a colander. And you can't get that back. Once that resource has been spent, that time, and it wasn't done efficiently and effectively, it's gone. And that's why I quite like having Kate on the podcast, to be honest, because I don't need to warm her up, like I don't need to sit there beforehand and say, here's exactly what we're going to talk about. Like, no, I'm not even joking. Like she's a professional. She does this every day, whether it's for BBC, Sky News, whatever it is that she's on. Like, so I literally start with her. Like today we had a quick chit chat before we started, purely because we all know each other. But with her, it's literally, should we go? Yeah. And you ask her a first question, she just goes. Like, I don't. And I find that quite reassuring as a podcast host as well, because I'm not trying to sort of like get her to where she needs to be. She knows her talking points. She's not wasting time talking about other things. She's just straight onto the talking points. And I think she recognises that MPs especially, or government ministers or civil servants, are also time poor. So there's no point going into these meetings talking about 7 or 8 side issues when you've got 3 really pressing issues.
So sort of thinking about what these organisations can achieve with the environment that we're in at the moment, and also leaning into one of my pet hates that I've certainly talked about plenty of times, VAT fraud. Do you think, with this huge black hole of debt, and certainly the government have hinted towards tackling some of these issues, do you think there'd be more of an appetite for, if there was some momentum around that? I've often thought that it would be great for some of these organisations to get together and commission, one of the top 5 accountants to actually estimate the loss of VAT income to the Treasury, because the number will be eye-watering. Do you think that would get their ear?
You'd like to think so, wouldn't you? Like if you imagine, I'm just trying to think, if you said to the government, hey, guess what? There's all this money over there that you don't see anything of. Oh, really? Oh, and all you've got to do is this, and this to get it.
I'm not sure they would, though, would they? Because
No.
they assess, they've sent somebody in, Kelly was telling me, that into the NHS to assess the NHS, and this person came back and said there's no point putting more money into the NHS until you fix the fundamental problems. And what do? Scrap that. Let's throw more money. So
it sounds good to the electorate, doesn't it? Oh, yeah. Guess what? Like we've gave the NHS another 20-something billion. I can't remember the exact figure.
Yeah.
And so we're all like, oh, great. Does anything change? I went for a blood test that day. That was the day after that was announced, and I said jokingly, so you've been clapping your hands tomorrow with all that extra money. She goes, and she just goes, the money comes every year. She goes, I've still got a job. Like, nothing changes around it. She goes, nothing changes. It's the same. Like, It's just as busy as it's ever been. And I do think the NHS especially is a victim of its own success. I will say that. Like, it is, if you think of the goals that they set out to achieve after the war, they've surpassed it massively. Like, now, could it be better? Yeah, I reckon it could. But back to Paul's question, like, I do think, I remember chatting to Kate Nichols about VAT fraud, especially, and she said it's never on their radar. It's never been mentioned because they don't really see that issue. Because remember, all of her, well, not all, but the majority of her not customers, membership base is a group or an international group, national group, a small to medium-sized business. They're not looking at. They're looking at how to grow their business legitimately. So she doesn't recognise any of that.
So you think those chains would be up against a lot of it, though? There's a lot of different cuisines out there. Certainly in restaurants that you can see what's going on. Obviously, it's prevalent in takeaways, isn't it? The key, big flag that sort of stands out is the cash only in the window.
I'm not sure that people like McDonald's and KFC, they're looking at what each other are doing. They're not necessarily looking at
that's
what
I'm when
those kind of guys, those big guys. But when you're talking about multiples that have got 20, 30 restaurants, pizza restaurants, for argument's sake, you're going to come up against plenty of opposition that are going to be giving that VAT free.
Well, I spoke to, I don't know if you heard the episodes I did with Les Howard about VAT. And
yes, yeah.
I'm paraphrasing now, but I think he sort of thinks nothing will ever change, or just carry on as it is. Like, and and I swear I can't remember because I need to go listen because I've done a lot of podcasts since then. But like, I think I'm paraphrasing, but I swear he said like, yeah, nothing's going to change. Government's gone on about stamping down on this for a long time. Now, one thing that could be good is HMRC was underfunded. So if they are going to fund them properly, you could argue they can actually just do their job effectively, which would be nice. Whether they do or not is a different story. I think that, I think one of the biggest key issues is the fact that it's how is it able to happen? How is it able to happen with all the technology we've got? How is that still an issue? And I think that's something that maybe government needs to deal with in one keystroke. They could probably deal with that.
Because of course these businesses are not going to be affected by a national minimum wage or employers NI because a lot of the time they're not even paying it, are they?
Well, and no, it could probably push them to, do more of that if in that respect. Yeah, because I don't want to do all this. I'll just give them 15 quid cash in hand, 14 quid cash in hand, and so. But again, I wonder how that falls because I think modern slavery department is well funded, and I was told by someone that actually a lot of the time, if you want, so they always said there's always this saying, well, if you think a shop near you is dodgy, report them to HMRC. Whereas actually, someone else said to me, it's in one of these departments, if you want them to have an investigation, actually the fastest way to do it is to report them for modern slavery, because paying someone cash in hand is technically modern slavery, and then that department is very well funded. Once that gets processed, other departments kick in because that's when they start talking to each other. So it's all about what department is the most well funded. And that's what it always comes down to. And like anything, when they bring out these laws and legislations, is there enough funding in that department to monitor anything? And if there isn't, then what's the point? Like, it's all right saying, oh, we're going to stamp down on this, this, and this. But again, it comes back to resources, and in this case, financial resources.
I mean, it makes me laugh because a few times in the past, we've had working pensions send us earnings directives where we have to take money out of people's wages to claim back, I don't know, for overpayments or fines that they've had. And we've got one guy who drives for us. He barely drives. He does part-time. He's probably earns 30 or 40 quid a month at the moment because he's so busy in his other job that he hasn't actually done many hours. And we've had multiple letters. This guy owes 60 quid to working pensions, and they have sent us we've phoned them up 6 times. Our accountants phoned them up to try to explain to them that their rules of that the person's got to take home a certain amount of money, and you can't deduct any money out of their wages if they haven't hit this trigger amount. Not sure what it is. And so we haven't deducted the money out of his wages. So they're starting sending us final demands saying that they're going to take us to court because we haven't deducted. And so they can't get that right. And we've spoken to them 6 times. How can they get, claw back all these fines that other people owe? When you're talking thousands of pounds. This kid owns 60 quid. I mean, it's ridiculous.
I get letters from HMRC for the PAYE to my home address. Don't know why, and I open them, and I'm like, oh, a final demand. So I'll take a photo straight away, and I send it Ryan, my FD essentially, and I'm like, what the hell, man? Like, have you not done this? He goes, look at all these emails. And he shows me. He goes, I've emailed them. I've sent them letters. We're all up to date. He goes, they've just not processed it.
Yeah,
and I'm like, because when you get a letter at home from HMRC, you think, hey, something's not right here. So your first instinct is you better get this sorted, and I guess that's the reason why they send it to your home, because they want it dealt with. And I've rang them once, and I said, oh, I'm looking at our balance on Xero, and I've been told where to look, so I have no idea where to look. So Ryan's told me where to look, and I'm like, I'm looking at our balance, and it's Xero. Can you confirm that? Yeah. I said, why did I get this letter? And they're like, oh, well, it's just a bit of a backlog in our technology. And I think this is the problem. If you can't even get the basics right, how are you then meant to do an investigation?
Yeah.
And I think that's also the problem. And that's why you're seeing a lot of companies now fighting back when they are being investigated, or they're now going to court over, let's say, suppression of VAT. They've got people have got the backbone now to say, you don't know what you're bloody on about. And they fight it back, which surprised me, because years ago you'd hear that it was a clear-cut case. Whereas now, I think solicitors are basically saying, no, they're terrible. They've got no proof. Fight back. So that's a mess in itself, isn't it?
Yeah. Does that come to underfunding? Is that?
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, probably. Yeah. I think probably everything comes back down to that. But if you listen to Les, he thinks half the issue is the fact that they've got no more local valuation offices no more. Les Howard, that is, from the VAT podcast. He was saying, like, if you've got no local valuation office, so if there's not one in Exmouth, who then comes to see you within 3 months of opening to see how you're getting on, do you need any help? Just suggestive help, not even scaring you. It's just, do you need any help? Someone that can tell you, just by the way, I'm looking at your menu. Did you know that seven of those items are vatable? You may not have known that.
Yeah.
It gets rid of all of those issues, and it makes them know that if they are the type of trader to fiddle like that, they're not going to get away with it because the local valuation office people are local.
Yeah.
Whereas now that everything's been centralised, nothing actually sits on anybody's desk no more, from what I understand, because we've got this centralised system. Whereas I probably think if they were smart, it will cost more, but a decentralised system of having local valuation offices would get rid of all of that. But they're not going to do that because that costs money.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I think that it's interesting because I asked Andrew Crook on the podcast that he's talking a lot more about, VAT fraud lately. And I can't remember exactly what he said because we did lose that recording and we're going to have to do it again. But I did sort of say to him, what's changed your tune? Why are you now talking about it a bit more? And I think he just thinks that it has to be spoken about now, which, I know you, Paul, have been really pushing them to talk about it for a long while.
Yeah.
And Hugh before you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And to be fair to Andrew, I've been on calls with him and HMRC, and we have tried to speak directly with the right people, but it's just very frustrating. Nothing seems to change. And as you'd said, it's why are they getting away with it? Because it's not like they need the resources for people to visit, feet on the ground, visit these shops. They've got all the data sources that they should need, particularly around the delivery aggregators. They get all of those feeds.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it should be as simple as, for me, in my mind, a task force dedicated to sort of, look into all of this stuff. But I don't know why. Maybe they don't think it's a big enough prize.
Yeah, I guess no, maybe. But I also think it's. All right, so I always think in government, like, if they're going to make a decision, they probably make a thought process of who do we annoy more by changing something that annoys a subset of people. So, for example, if we've got 20 people that really hate VAT fraud, are we going to pee off 2,000 people by changing something? And I think this is how they think. If it's going to lose them votes or make them unpopular, look at the farmers, for example. Inheritance tax, it's not an overly big deal to the average person. It's not as bad as it sounds, but it's not as good as it could be. And when you add it to the measures that we've discussed anyway, it probably makes them feel like, why do I bother? But they're willing to jump on their tractors to go to Whitehall and kick off. Whereas most businesses barely pick up the phone to talk to their accountant when they're peed off, like, let alone actually protest. So we sort of, because business people are quite resilient. We'll just suck it and see. We'll just sort of take it on the chin. And obviously everyone's got a limit. You'll snap somewhere. But I remember chatting to a customer friend of the show, Mark Drummond, and we were listening to, he sent me a podcast. It was about 4 years ago, so it's pre-COVID. And he said to me, if you think the government, I'm paraphrasing now because it was a while ago, but he said, if you think the government will ever do anything about chip shops and suppression of VAT, he goes, why don't they do anything about this? And it was a half an hour podcast about, or radio that was recorded. It was about how in Leicester there was a lot of VAT suppression in the rag trade, in the factories. And they literally, these companies were getting away with like £2-3 million a year. And they'd basically get to a year, shut down the business. And these were major companies supplying the likes of ASOS, Boohoo. So they're not small by any stretch of the imagination. And they weren't doing anything about that. And from what I can tell, nothing's still been done about that. So if you're leaving, in a very local area, £3-4 million a year per company, could be 10 companies a year, you're into 30-40 million of money going missing. And I do wonder, is it because that money will end up getting spent think of the logic for a moment. If you've got, I don't know, a few £100 out your business a week that you're not going to declare, you're going to use it. You're going to go shopping. You're going to buy a holiday. You're going to buy a telly. And I wonder if it's because they calculate that money is going to enter in the economy from a different stream. I don't know. It's just a thought process. I don't know.
Maybe.
Because I don't think it is lost money. I don't think that money in box A never made it to box B. It didn't disappear. It has entered the system just from a different place. And I wonder if that's why they think that's not so urgent. But I'm not an economist, so I don't know the exact figures behind that. It's just a thought process, you know?
Yeah, I mean, from speaking of my end, it's just so frustrating that, you know, particularly the fish and chip industry is exposed to this, and it's just not a level playing field. And when you're thinking about 2025 and all the extra costs and challenges that we're going to have, knowing that that's going to have a more limited effect on a lot of your competition is frustrating. And it's a difficult one to swallow. And it's almost to the point now, over the years, I've calmed myself down a bit in terms of how I react, because social media can be a pretty cruel place sometimes. We don't always get it right 100% of the time, and people love to speak ill of food on social media. And in the past, I've argued the differences between us and the chip shop around the corner, but certainly refrained back from that now. But it's almost in today's world where people are struggling for disposable income. If they knew the customers, that this person wasn't charging VAT, that, you know, pays his staff cash in hand, if they knew all that stuff, they kind of still wouldn't care if it meant that they got their fish and chips a little bit cheaper. I'd almost go as far as to say they give them a high five for saving me £2.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
You're probably right. You know,
We've had a customer before that's complained about our prices, and then this is after she's bought the product. And when we've said, well, we're VAT registered, 20% of that goes to the VAT man, her answer wasn't, oh, well, that's all right then. Her answer was, I'll go to a chip shop that isn't VAT registered. And so what can you do about that? I mean, there's nothing you can do.
And also, I don't think anybody's got a right to complain about the price after they bought it. It's not like you hid it from them. Like, no. I'm sorry, like no. You know, like, so I've never understood the logic. Like, obviously they'll complain anyway, but the fact is they made the choice. Yeah, like, and I just think that inequality is always going to exist, and people are always going to spend, you know, how it suits them. How many people like would jump in like let's say a dodgy taxi because they want to save a bit of money on the taxi fare? It all exists. Like, they don't have insurance, they've got bold tires, etc. They don't have car seats if you've got kids, but it cost me a £5, not £15.
Yeah.
So I think these exist everywhere. Like, I think there is very quick ways to fix the problem, but again, I don't think they'd even have to work too hard at it. I really don't. So I had a message.
Well, they did say in the budget that they were going to try and claw in some of the lost fines and whatever. You know, they did. I get that. I'm right saying that, aren't I?
Yeah, they did.
They were going to try and claw some of it back.
Yeah. But again, all of it will be small change. I had a message the other day on my Facebook page from a customer in Kent. And he was kicking off, saying that he's had real big arguments with Andrew Crook. Now I get his point, and I get Andrew's point. So he's shouting, saying Andrew's not doing anything about it, but Andrew's saying there's only so much I can do, and that's true. They're both true. Like, well, no, it's not true that Andrew's not doing anything about it, but it's also true that he could probably do more. But there's also so much he can do. But he was really particularly zooming into the fact that wholesalers allow double invoicing. And he was having this big argument with Andrew, saying, why don't you talk to the wholesalers? This ain't acceptable. And Andrew's saying, like, in this message group, and obviously this is why I want to get Andrew on to talk about this, and it's private messages, which probably shouldn't be shared to some degree. But, like, I feel like it's probably wrong that I'm mentioning it, but the point is, it's not a secret. We know that's where it's coming from. And I think, and you've had these conversations, Tim, and like, not Tim, sorry, Paul, and I think we know that's where it's coming from to some degree, or at least it's enabling. And it gets annoying to people like us that are all trying to do it right. We get people that ring us and say, oh, I won't use your website because you don't do cash sales. I'm like, well, we can't. It's impossible. We don't want to, and you can't. It's a website. The whole point is being frictionless. I couldn't think of anything more I couldn't think of anything more opposite frictionless than adding that element to my business. So I think that there's some very quick things that anybody could do if they really understood the problem and wanted to deal with it. Is the political appetite there? No, I don't think so. And moving on to the next point, the last point really, the two last points is the main one, is business rates. Does this affect your businesses, guys?
It's going to. Yeah, I mean, we don't get we get the small business rate relief. We don't get the 100%. I think it's 75%. So what's it going down to? Is it 40 something?
Yeah, 40%. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's going to be another cost.
This one doesn't actually affect us because there's a cap on how much you can claim, which didn't change. The cap is 110,000, and that didn't change. So, and the cap is per business. So we claim 70% on business rates for a certain amount of our stores until we get to 110,000, and that's all we can claim. Now we can claim 40%, but we'll just claim that off of more of our shops until it adds up to 110. So for us, it hasn't actually changed.
It's interesting. Yeah, I did see that they've now released, and we're writing an article at the moment, they have released some more guidance to what they might do in 2026, which apparently is reform. So, but again, it just looks like less people pay, and they put that burden onto, I think, supermarkets and so on, bigger locations. And I can see how that sort of is okay for small business, but I do wonder, is that unsustainable still? I just wonder if are they better off just rewriting it from the bottom, from the ground up, and just starting fresh.
Yeah, I mean, I listened to the podcast that you did with Kate, and I think she summed that up quite well. I'm very interested to see what that reform will look like that they've committed to for 2026. I certainly have a keen eye on sort of seeing how that pans out.
Yeah. A note I want to finish on, guys. I know Tim mentioned he doesn't want to open any more shops, but I don't believe in Paul. Are you seeing better buying opportunities in this climate?
Interesting. So certainly the value of fish and chips has certainly changed dramatically. I would say that's probably been the last couple of years. Fish and chips is a tricky business to grow, you know. When you try and get out there and open greenfield sites, there's a limited number of opportunities because fish and chips is the oldest takeaway in the land, and you could throw a stone from any new site and there would be a fish and chip shop within a mile, half a mile. So that's quite a difficult option. And then existing businesses is where we've grown successfully a lot. But good fish and chip businesses tend to stay in families for generations. And when they come up, you've got to be ready to get them because they might not come up for another 20 years. Have we seen more come up on the market in recent years? Yes, definitely. There's a bit of disconnect between what some business owners think a fish and chip shop is worth in today's money, because there's all sorts of weird and wonderful, strange valuations that have applied in our industry in the past that are not relevant today. So I think, there is certainly more opportunities, outstanding opportunities, which is what I would only move on at the moment with where we are. There's still few and far between at the moment. Will that change because of these pressures? Quite possibly.
But that's quite similar then, in terms of there's only a few really, really good opportunities. That's pretty similar to where it's always been, isn't it?
Yeah, I would say it pretty much has always been like that. I think, if I talk of Toffs, for example, the sort of London brand that we bought, which is we're having a lot of success with, I could see that has got a big opportunity to grow through London. and finding sites and opening sites in London. We won't have difficulty, I don't think, finding sites in London. But of course, there's more risk there with the cost to open. The rents and the rates are a lot higher. So it's balancing all of that.
Yeah. How about you, Tim? Are you looking or are you not looking at all?
I'm always looking. Even when I don't want any more shops, I'm always looking. But I haven't seen anything. Nothing has really changed. There's a lot of the shops that you wouldn't really look at because they're either too small that you'd never. When you're looking for another site, you've got to have a shop that takes a certain amount every week to even consider it. Because of costs of putting a manager in there, and it's not a husband and you can't take your average husband and wife shop and then expect to be able to put a manager in there and still make a profit.
What's the threshold for you, Tim, in your mind? What's the sort of number, gross sales turnover a week that sort of makes it of interest to you, assuming that the rents, etc., are palatable?
Minimum of 15,000 a week turnover.
How about you, Paul?
Yeah, that would be bang on the number.
Yeah. I've got 3 if you want.
Yeah.
No, I think that would be a tricky act to follow, but yeah.
I mean, I'm always looking, but I don't think there's, when the NRF used to say that constantly that a third of shops are going to shut down, and I never really saw that influx in the places that I look for businesses for sale, and certainly not good ones, particularly.
Yeah, I think again it's that low barrier to entry. I see a lot of shops that have like 45-year-old frying ranges. They've still got Formica counters. They've still got beige tiles, and they've not been invested in. So those sort of shops trade very lowly. So what happens is they'll close and someone can buy it for a bit of a premium of 30 grand, and they'll walk in and think, I can make this work. But again, it's a very busy area. There's 15 shops around them within a 2-mile radius. Yeah. So it makes things very. Yes, it's a low buy-in, but what they don't see is how difficult things are around them. So I do think some of those shops would be better off being converted. There's a shop in my local area. It's very small. It's terrible position. It's on a T junction. It's literally the T. The houses are all behind them, and they've just refit it. And I'm thinking, come on. I drive past it to come home, and I'm like, that's not a smart move. I wouldn't have refitted it. You're struggling, and I understand the ambition behind it, but sometimes you've got to say, I would have been better off splitting that in 2. I already rent out the upstairs. I might as well rent out the downstairs, and off I go. But they don't, because they see the value in the A3, A5 license. It probably fools them a little bit in thinking there's more value, whereas actually they probably would have got their money back as a rental property in 3-4 years.
Yeah.
So I do think some of those shops would be better off just converting back to rental, residential. And off you go. And I don't just mean any chip shop. I mean anything, like a little dinky shop somewhere, that's not. It could be a little corner shop or something. If there's no value no more, just go back to being residential. It doesn't strictly have to stay commercial forever. But also,
I would look at a shop that, even if it wasn't taking the 15,000 a week, if I felt that there was potential there, because the last thing I want to do is go in and buy the lease of a business for 200,000 and then rip the whole place out and turn it into a Krispies, which would cost me another £250,000. Yeah. For me, going into somewhere that's cheap, that we can rip out, start again, that's dated, and turn it into a Krispies, that's the better way, or a greenfield site, which is what we did in Exeter. But it would need to be close enough to us that our name carries across, because we're not Fishnchickn or Churchills. We've noticed the difference even going half an hour away. People know us, but they don't know us as well as they did in Exmouth. We opened our second one in Exmouth. It was the lease cost us 20 grand. We ripped it all out, selling it as Krispies, and from day one it went bang. It was good in Exeter, but it's taken a little bit more work to carry our name. So if we stayed within sort of half an hour radius of Exmouth, I think our name would carry. But but the site needs to have the potential of the growth. It doesn't necessarily have to be doing it. If you can clearly see why it's not doing it, that it's dated, or and it needs to be a decent size. You need that space to be able to do what we do.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's important. You got to, again, you've just got to look at these opportunities and think, are they worth it? Some of them are not, and some of them are, and but I do see openings. I get people, you mentioned it, Tim, that the NFFF was saying that a lot of shops are going to close. I'm seeing a lot of emails saying I'm about to open a chip shop. I've just took over a chip shop. I'm seeing a lot of that.
Yeah.
So I do think that's a positive. I think that, but I think that's also normal. Like I always saw a steady influx of people buying a shop. Always, like I don't think that's changed. And I think, if anything, post-COVID, some people want to be more entrepreneurial, and so I don't know. I don't think it's as bad as that we were warned. But is there headwinds? Yes, absolutely. There are lots of headwinds. I do think everyone's going to have to be a bit sharper on their figures, run it more like a business. Can't treat the till like your wallet. You've got to really have some good structures in place. And I think, can it still be a great business for people? Absolutely. I did. If you heard the podcast I did with Stuart Mitchell, Patrick Claiborne, and David Miller, I'm always pro the industry. I really do think that we've got a great future ahead of us, but we're going to have to change how we think as traders. I'm not a trader, you guys are, but we've got to overcome these obstacles that are in front of us. And yes, there are obstacles, like you said, fish is going up, potatoes, Adira, but that could also work in your favour too, guys, because you guys know how to make money at those levels, others may not, and I think that's also an advantage when you're business minded. That other people may just think, you know what, I'm throwing the towel in, I'm not doing this.
I mean, this is what worries me about the budget, that there must be so many small businesses, fish and chip shops out there that just haven't even run the figures. They don't know what it's going to cost them. They just think that it'll be all right. We'll see what happens when we get there. See how, when that first bill comes in, what that is going to cost us. But then obviously a lot of these small businesses may not employ that many people, so it's probably not going to affect them. And in
terms of NI, most small businesses won't notice it at all. Yeah,
no, and the increase in the what's it called, the employer's allowance probably absorbs any increase in the NI anyway. But they're going to be affected by the minimum wage, and people need to do the calculations of what that's going to cost them. Otherwise, if they go through it with their head in the sand, they may find themselves in a bit of trouble.
Yeah. One of the things I'd like to finish off, if everybody's listening to this, is I think it's really important to not wait till your year end to sit and ask your accountant what your books were like. I think that is far too late to find out what last year's books were like. I think, there's there's spreadsheets, there's Xero, there's all of these tools now that we've got. I know you've got a finance department, but it doesn't matter because you're still asking the right questions, Paul. But you've got Xero, I know you use Xero, Tim, so you've got all of these tools at our fingertips to understand weekly, but you don't even need any of those. Like going back to Mark Drummond, he knows every week what his GP is just by doing some basic math on some regular maths that he does within his business. So I think that's really important. Another thing, it's every week putting aside 1/6 of your turnover for the VAT. These little rules within your business will really help you have a good system in place that will make it'll make all these things feel like less of a shock. And I think, but if you're waiting, a year down the line to see your accountant about last year's accounts, and let's say you made a loss and you only find out about it a year later, that's a long time to go. Hitting your pocket in your business.
You've got to set yourself up for success. You've got to understand what's coming. Generally, we've got some great operators in the industry that evolve really well, and we've certainly faced plenty of challenges before and come on top. So I'm sure we can do the same again. It's not going to be easy, but you've got to lean into it and take your team with you.
Yeah. On that note, guys, thank you for your time today. It's been epic. I've really enjoyed it, actually. And, we should do this again, maybe in a year's time or something, after the next budget.
Sounds good. Been a
Oh
pleasure.
my god! I just laughed
thank
and
you.
thought to myself, "Oh my god, what the hell? How bad's it going to be by then?" But you never know. Like, all right, guys, have a great
Cheers,
day.
guys.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to episode 192 of the Ceres Podcast with Paul Goodgame and Tim Barnes at Krispies. I hope you really enjoyed it. It's always a pleasure talking to Tim and Paul separately or together. They're both great. We're just trying to get people to share their perspectives. It's not always going to be perfect. It's not always going to be right. It's not always going to be 100% factual. But we're trying to navigate our way through the situation that we put ourselves into when we're in business. So we'd love to hear your takeaways from the episode, so you can, if you want, join the conversation or start a conversation in the Ceres Podcast discussion group on Facebook. Let us know what resonated with you. Don't forget to follow us on social media and subscribe to our mailing list. We're going to have loads of new offers coming. We've always got news coming, lots of special offers, lots of competitions. Christmas is around the corner, so it's good to keep in touch. Remember, we've also set up a WhatsApp announcement group. It's probably a good way to stay informed about podcast news, offers, competitions. The link will be in the show notes, so be sure to join. And, at Ceres, we're here to help your business succeed and thrive with innovative products and valuable insights. So let us know what you're working on. We're always here to try and promote you. So, have a great day.